There is nothing better than when you're worshiping God and the things that you're singing about are about Him. That's the difference between a song that is supposed to make you feel good and a song that's to worship and praise God. And I was talking to my wife about that on the way to church this morning. That's the difference between what a real worship song is that when you're talking about God and what He's done and not you and what you're going through. That's when you're really worshiping God, when you start singing about Him and how great He is and not you and how low you are. That's the difference between those things. So that got my spirit going this morning. Let's open our Bibles to Joshua chapter 1. As you're getting there, I'm going to try to get you caught up with where we're at. We have for like 3 weeks now been talking about prayer. And so we began, and oddly enough, when we talked about prayer, in Romans chapter 1, where we talked about how there's power in the gospel and how there's power in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that would lead the next year of our church. And that's everything that we do from this point on for the rest of this year is going to focus back in on the gospel. And I told you that as a church that wanted to proclaim the gospel, there's something that I felt like we were shortcoming at, and that was that we weren't a good church that prays. And I told you that if there was one thing I hope we could do this year is that we would get better about, one, praying for God's will in our church, that we would get better at that. Because if we can get that right, we can get anything else right. I don't care if we're a church that brings in 1,000 people here. If we can't pray for God's will in our will and His will in our life and in our church, that everything else will just be shortcoming for us. So we want God's will above all things. Then we also become a church that prays for our community. That there's people around us that are hurting and are lost, and we want to pray for them. And then also we be a church that prays for each other. And so we entered into 31 days of prayer in May. And I wish I could tell you every single day I've gotten this. I've been really good about it. I have not. But that's what we're working on. We're just trying to get better at it. And so then last week, we turned over to Matthew chapter 6, where we looked at Jesus telling His disciples, this is how you pray. And in that prayer that He prays, He shows us what prayer really is and how you're supposed to do it. And the first thing that He does is He acknowledges God for who He is. He says, our Father who art in heaven. And it says so much about God in just so few words. And when He says that you're the Father in heaven, what He was really saying is you're the creator of all of the universe. And you got all of this power and all of this ability. And just by your thoughts and your words, you're keeping this all together for us. You're keeping the world in motion just by thinking it. But then on top of that, all your power and all your ability, God, you're still, that word, Father. You're still our dad. And you still want to have a relationship with us. And how great and how amazing is that the creator of all the universe looks at you and calls you child and wants to talk to you. How about if you mess things up and He's still creator of all of the universe, sustainer of all life, and He wants to talk to you. How amazing is that? But then we also see how He tells us that we should surrender to God's will. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He says that if you seek anything in life, and it is not the will of God, you will always come up short. You will keep wanting and keep wanting and keep wanting, and you will never receive because you're not seeking out the things that you need in life. You're seeking out your desires and your own wants, but it's not until your desires line up with God's desires that He hears your prayers. He says, go for what God wants, and He will always answer you. And then we see how Jesus tells us that we should ask for forgiveness and a commitment to repentance of our sins. He tells us that in all things, ask for the forgiveness of when you have wronged somebody. Forget our debts as we forget those that are debted against us. In prayer, that's how you go to the Lord and lay out everything you've done wrong to Him. You come before the Creator who told you you shouldn't sin. Live a sinless life. Live the perfect life. And when you come up short, you get to come to Him in prayer and lay it all out in front of Him. He says, He doesn't even need that. That's for you. He already sees everything you've ever done. Knows every thought you've ever had fire up in your brain. Every word you've spoken. He knows all of it. It's not for Him, it's for you. to come to him, lay it all out, ask for forgiveness, but more than anything than that, because you can just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming and asking for forgiveness. He said what was more important is when you start coming to him and asking for the strength to repent so you don't have to keep coming back for forgiveness. And then we get to even petition to him for our needs. That we get to come to the God of all of the universe. He says, give us this day our daily bread. If there's something you're lacking in life, come before the Creator and ask for it, and he'll give it to you. He says he won't hold out anything good from those who love him and those who seek his will. He will always answer your prayers. And then the final thing is a reminder to us is that the things that we would seek in life to build for ourselves, for yours is the glory, the power, and the honor. All these things is yours. This is your kingdom. And I told you how we will spend a lifetime here on earth trying to build up our own kingdom and then make much glory about ourselves and the things that we do, and then have all of the power over our own lives even. And then these are the things that we would try to do. But in everything that you try to establish on this earth, one day it will all go away. It will die with this earth and it will be gone. But those things that you try to build for yourselves, that you are stealing from God, you are robbing him of those things, they're his forever. Eternally his. And he ends with amen. And so he says, this is your reminder. For yours are these things, not mine. So let's go to Joshua. Today we're going to look at a specific prayer. So we're going to look at 2 times that Joshua speaks to the Lord. One time wrongfully even, and the second time rightfully. And he's going to do something completely amazing. He's going to ask God to defy all logic, all scientific ability, anything that you think is possible, even the supernatural. He's going to ask God to do it, and God comes through for him. It's insane. So let's start in Joshua chapter 1. So we got to lay down some groundwork. And if I could get you to stand, let's honor God today. If you can't, please remain seated. But we'd like to honor God by the reading of his holy word and just revere it as we stand and read together. We'll read Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9 together. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shall you divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy ways prosper, and then thou shalt have good success. Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whereverso thou goest. Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, please bless the reading of this holy word. We thank you that your holy word has passed through all time together. That when you spoke it, it was written, and then today it's been preserved for us. That we would know what you would desire of us. That we could look back in history and see how those that came before us did right and did wrong. And you taught them then, and you can teach us today. Give us the word to speak today. Give us the word of life, that we can experience a life and experience it more boldly with you, God. Let us walk away from our sins today and walk closer with you in prayer and with fellowship with one another. God, we love you and we thank you for all that you've done for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. All right, so before we go to the next verses, we're going to do a little background because there's a lot to get through here. So a little lead into this is what had just happened here is Moses had led, by God's will, all of the Israelites out of Egypt. And he leads them through the wilderness. And in the wilderness, they would sin. And God would tell them, anybody that is an adult will not see the promised land. In fact, you will die in the wilderness. Your kids will get to go, but you will not. And then Moses himself messes up. And God says, all right, the promised land that I told you about, you will get to see it, but you yourself won't get to enter into it. And so Moses in the wilderness comes upon the River Jordan. He stands there. He gets to see the promised land, but there he dies. And so God raises up Joshua, who was a man after God's own heart. In fact, he was one of only 2 adults that got to, when the rest of the Israelites sinned, him and this other fella were the only 2 that didn't. They were the only 2 adults that were living during that time that would get to go into the promised land, and Joshua would be the one that would lead them. And so they come upon the River Jordan, and there they take the altar. And they're instructed by God to lead it out into the Jordan. And when their feet touch the water, down the river a ways, God shuts off the water. And the water quits flowing. And all of the Israelites, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of Israelites, would then walk across this dry Jordan River to the other side, into the promised land. And when the time they did it, the Bible even says that the banks were overflowing with water. That it was a time of harvest and there's plentiful water. So it wasn't dry, it was full of water. And God shuts it off. And the Israelites cross over. Now, the kingdoms in the promised land had heard this, and a fear goes out among them. And the first city that the Israelites would come to is Jericho. And the king of Jericho hears what happens, and so he decides to shut up the entire city. Close up. Nobody goes out. Nobody comes in. And God says, that is where you will go first. And that is the first city you will take. And so he gives them the commands that they would march around the city 7 days in a row. And on the last day, they would blow ram's horns, shout with a great shout, and the walls of this great city would come tumbling down. And that's exactly what happens. But God tells them before they go in that before you do anything, I want you to know, when that city comes down, you destroy everything. Any plunder belongs to the Lord. Anything you find, it's his, and you destroy everything else. But one man kept some of it. One man hid it and buried it under the ground in his tent. And so when they're done with this conquest of Jericho, the generals for Joshua comes and said, hey, there's this town down the road here. Ai is how it's spelled. And we want to just send a couple thousand men. They're such a small town. We'll just send them, and they'll go destroy this little town also. So Joshua says, hey, yeah, let's do that. We'll send this 2,000 or 3,000 men down there, and we'll let them just go destroy this little town. So when they get there, a great fear comes upon these men because the Spirit of the Lord is not with them. For the first time since they have left, they were going into battle without the Lord. And a great fear comes upon them, and they flee in fear and run off. And many of them were actually killed. And so they come back to the camp and say, this didn't work. So then we'll go to Joshua chapter 7. We'll pick up that story. Joshua chapter 7 verse 6. And Joshua rent his clothes and fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of the Lord until the eventide, he and the elders of Israel, and put dust upon their heads. And Joshua said, Alas, O Lord God, wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan to deliver us to the hand of the Amorites to destroy us? Would to God we had been content and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. O Lord, what shall I say when Israel turneth their backs before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear of it, and shall environ us round, and cut off our name from the earth. And what wilt thou do unto thy great name? This is the first time that Joshua was going to speak to the Lord. And I told you he would speak to him twice. And the first time he would do it wrongfully. Joshua comes to the Lord, and for the first time ever, he doesn't present God's promises to him. He presents a problem to the Lord. He comes to the Lord and forgets about what God had promised them. God had told him, and we read it in chapter 1, wherever your feet touch, that's your land. And he lays it out for him. Here, you will go this far, and you'll go this far, and you'll go this far. And no matter where you go, wherever your feet touch, that's going to be your land. No man will be able to rise up against you, because I, the Lord God, are going to fight for you, and I will slaughter them. He didn't come to God and present this promise. He said, God, here's my problem with this. How would you bring us here just so we would die? He didn't think for a moment, why would God not be fighting for us? He just came to him and said, why wouldn't you just let us stay on the other side of the river if you would just bring us to this side of the river to die? Joshua took his eyes off the promise. If Joshua and his generals and his leaders were doing what they were supposed to do, when they got done plundering and tearing apart this city of Jericho, they would observe each man as they were coming out, and they would let no man take anything. But they took their eyes off of that, and they started looking at themselves and what they were doing. They said, man, aren't we great? Aren't we good? We just destroyed the greatest city. The city of Jericho that no man could get inside. That's the city that we just took down. And they took their eyes off God for a minute. And they let a man come out of there carrying, he said, silver and fine cloths. He would bury it in his tent. He came to God and presented all of his problems instead of God's promises. He didn't proclaim God's promises over their situation. He came and presented his problems to God. But the Lord answers him. The Lord speaks to him. Even when you come to God wrongfully, God will still talk to you. In verse 10, and the Lord said unto Joshua, get thee up. Wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face? Israel hath sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. For they even take of the accursed thing, and have stolen, and disassembled also, and they put it in even among their own stuff. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were accursed. Neither will I be with you anymore, except you to destroy the accursed thing from among you. God says, I'm not going to be a part of this. You were supposed to be my people. I told you that if you just obey my ways, if you take my law and you take it with you into this promised land, wherever your feet touch, that's your land now. I will drive out all the inhabitants of this land if you just follow my law. And the Lord gave him a law and said, when you take Jericho, destroy everything. Keep nothing for yourself. All the valuables belong to the house of the Lord, and you destroy everything else. But one man decided that he was going to keep a little for himself and his family, and would bring it home and bury it under his tent. And the Lord said, I won't be a part of this. I won't go before you anymore, and I won't be your God anymore, so long as you keep this accursed thing among you. So the Lord tells him how to take care of this, and he tells him that he would bring every tribe, a leader from every tribe together, and one would be chosen. And then in that tribe, all of the leaders of that tribe would come together, and one would be chosen. And then all of the people of that people, all his kids, would come together, and one would be chosen. So far, you would get down the line until you got to just one man. And that man would be chosen. He said, it's you. What have you done? What have you kept that wasn't yours? Tell me now. Joshua even says, tell me now. Don't lie to me. I know it's you. What have you done? And the man said, I'm so sorry. You're right. I kept some things, and I buried them. And Joshua sends men to go recover them. And they take all of that, and all of the people that were part of this man's tent and his family, take them out into a valley and stone them to death and burn them there. Because God said, so long as he and this is amongst you, and everybody that knew he'd done this is amongst you, I will not be your God. Because you will value them more than you value me. And he tells Joshua, I want to be your God. But I can't do that so long as somebody is more important to you than I am. If he would disobey me now, he would disobey me forever. Take him to the valley. Take it to the valley. Take everything he stole from me to the valley. And there it'll all be burned. And they do so rightfully. And God comes to Joshua again afterward and says, you've done the right thing. Now I will continue to be for you, and I will lead you into this promised land. So they go to Ai after that, and God gives them some instructions. It says, lay a trap for this land. Lay a trap for them, and I will go before you, and I'll put fear in them, and you will overtake this town. This little town that scared your army away, they're now yours. Because now I'm fighting for you again. And so they send a huge army to the flank to hide behind the city. And all the Israelites that are left come up to the city to fight. And when they open the gates and they see that the Israelites have assembled before them, they think, wow, we ran them off a few days ago, and today we'll run them off again. And so the inhabitants of Ai, all of them, leave the city and to pursue the Israelites. And this leaves the opportunity for the great army of Israel to go into the town and burn everything. But God tells them, last time when you took Jericho, you couldn't keep anything. Today you keep anything you want. Because I'm still for you. I just want to see how obedient you will be. And so the Israelites go into Ai and destroy everything. And in this moment, and we see this back in Exodus when Moses was leading an army, he would raise his staff, and so long as he kept his staff in the air, the armies would press further and further and overtake their opponents. But if his arm lowered, the other army would pursue this way. Joshua does pretty much the same thing, but he does it with a spear. He raises a spear towards the enemy, and so long as he's got that spear up, his armies overcome. In fact, we're told that he doesn't ever lower that arm. The entire time that they're fighting Ai, he keeps his arm extended, and they overcome their enemies, destroy everything, leave nobody to survive. They kill all of their enemies. So what was the difference? They had God on their side. They came once and they were so overcome with fear that they had to flee their opponents. They had to flee from their enemies. But they come a second time and they have God on their side. And God's able to show out for them. But word of this fight gets out to the other kingdoms in the area. And 5 kings would come together and decide that they were going to make an alliance to destroy Israel. But one of the kingdoms decides that they're not going to be a part of this. One of the kingdoms comes together and says that they know what God has done. He's led them out of Egypt, the great Egypt. He plagued them until they were into submission, and they couldn't do anything but let the Israelites go. And then they pursue them after the Israelites leave. They pursue them to a river and corner them against the river. But in that moment, God opens the river and allows them to cross on dry land. And when their enemies pursue, He closes the river upon them. And Israel would never again see their enemies from Egypt. Ever again. And He leads them through the wilderness. And any bandits, any small community that raised up against them to try to defeat them, God would strike them down. And then He brings them to the Jordan and opens up the Jordan for them to cross over. And every great city that they come upon, the Lord fights for them and destroys them. So one kingdom comes to them and lies to Joshua and his people, saying that they come from afar off. They've been traveling for a long time, so much so that they brought their moldy bread and their old dirty clothes with them so they could help prove this lie. And they try to form an alliance with Joshua. And basically Joshua says, if you want to be our servants, be our servants. But that's as far as this goes. And then it even comes out that they lied to them. He said, well, you're just like our neighbors. Why would you come to us and lie? And he said, because we feared you. We feared what you would do to us. You slaughtered everybody else along the way. He says, fine, and you can be our servants for the rest of your lives. That's fine. You will be our servants, and we will be your masters, and that's fine. And so 5 kingdoms come together then. the kingdoms of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon come together to form an alliance to attack Israel, because they think if we got power and numbers here, we can do this. So they the Gibeonites were the ones that had lied to the Israelites. So these 5 armies said, well, first thing we're going to wipe out these guys that traded us. They were supposed to be on our side. That's fine. Let's just go take the Gibeonites out. So they arrive to Gibeon, and they're going to attack this city. And they send out word to Joshua, and Joshua receives word that these people who are supposed to be their servants now are being attacked by these 5 armies. And so the word of the Lord comes to Joshua and says, you go defend them. Go to Gibeon. And there you will wage war against these 5 nations that have formed an alliance to destroy you. That's in Joshua chapter 10, if you want to go to Joshua chapter 10 with me. In verse 6, and the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp of Gilgal, saying, slack not thy hand from thy servants. Come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomforted them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Bethron, and smote them to Azekah unto Makkedah. Verse 11, and it came to pass that they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down to Bethron, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. They were more which died with hailstones, and they with the children of Israel slew with the sword. Something's about to happen here, though. The Lord had made a promise to Joshua that by their hand and by the Lord fighting for him, that not one man would survive this. No enemy of Israel would survive what they have just done to Israel. And so Joshua takes his armies to battle. And there they start slaughtering everybody. And the Lord puts fear in them. And they start dying. And then a great sign from heaven starts dropping hailstones on them. And they start dying. In fact, it says more people died from the hailstones than the Israelites fighting them. But something's about to happen here. See, the sun was actually setting at the time. And when the sun set, and before the sun set, all of the enemies of Israel were already fleeing from them. I mean, you got to imagine you're on a battlefield and you're attacking your enemies and you're winning because they're so scared of you that, and then as they're starting to back off and starting to flee from the fight, hailstones start coming down and killing them. They're going to start scattering and running, and it says that they start scattering to the left and to the right and running every which direction, right? And the sun starts setting. And Joshua knows that if the sun sets today, these people are going to get away. And God's promise was that anybody that raised their hand against them would not survive. So Joshua sees an opportunity. He sees that if the sun sets today, the enemy will flee and they will survive what they've just done to us. So Joshua, for the second time, will speak to the Lord. But he does so rightfully this time. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in sight of Israel, sun, stand still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their names. Is it not written in the book of Jashir? So the sun stood still in the midst of the heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Joshua speaks to the Lord. And because his heart is aligned with the Lord, and because he remembered the promise that the Lord had made to him, he said, Joshua, you're just going to go to Gibeon. And when you get there, you're going to kill everybody because I'm fighting for you. And then in the midst of this, he sees the sun's going down, and he knows the enemies will flee and get away from them. And he said, no, you said the revenge is ours today, Lord, that we could go and we could avenge what these people have done to us. And as the sun is about to set, he speaks to the Lord, and in front of all of Israel, he commands the sun to quit moving. And behind him, where the moon is, he says, and you will stand still as well, and you too will not move until I tell you to. He didn't present the problem to the Lord. He didn't come to the Lord like he did before and say, but Lord, all of our enemies will flee and they'll gather together and they'll come back and kill us. No, he presented God's promise to the Lord. He said, your promise to us was that we would kill these people, and here's what needs to happen for that to do. I don't want the sun to set today. Because so long as we have light, we'll kill them. We'll chase them and we'll kill them, and the Lord allows him to command the sun and moon to stand still. Because he didn't focus on the problem. He focused on the promise that the Lord had made. And the Lord had promised him, you'll kill them. You'll slaughter them. You'll make them wish they had never rose up against you. He says, not a day before it ever happened like this, and not a day again ever again would happen like this. The sun stopped moving for a whole day. For a whole day, the sun set on this scene. And the Israelites chased their enemies into the wild and killed them all. And not one survived. It said even the 5 kings fled. And they fled into a cave. And because everybody wanted to go kill the kings, Joshua called his commanders together and said, no, just go roll some big stones in front of that cave. We'll deal with them later. They can't get out. Pile stones up and let them stay in the cave. Your job is to go kill all these people. So they go, and while the 5 kings are hiding in a cave, they roll stones in front of it and just leave them there for a few days. And then they go kill everybody that had came against them. And Joshua brings them all together and says, bring me the 5 kings now. And they go and remove the stones, and they bring the 5 kings and throw them in front of Joshua, and they hang them. Hang them up for everybody to see. Kill them and hang them. And it does, they drop them, so they'll never be remembered again. Joshua didn't bring his problems to the Lord. He brought the promise that the Lord had given him. And said, if your promise is today that we will kill anybody that came and rose up against us, then we need something from you, Lord. We need you to do something incredible for us. Joshua had no authority to call the sun and the moon to holding in their pattern. But for a moment, his will lined up with the Lord's. And the Lord's will was that anybody who had stood up against Israel would die that day. He said, that day. So he made the day last 2 days. And never again would that happen again. So what I want to tell you is that the Lord shows us here in Joshua that when you're faced with a problem, no matter how big it is, his promises to you far exceed your problem. If God has made a promise to you in life, he is willing to come through for you. He's shown a willingness to do something incredible for you to show that his promises are true. So what is in your life today that he can't take care of? What is in your life today that your problem is too big for his promise? His promises for you are for what? To never harm you. To love you. Never forsake you. That his son in the day of judgment would stand up for you and say, he has accepted me as his Savior and as his Lord, and all the sins that you just read out about him, everything he's ever done wrong in life, I will take those upon me now. These are his promises to you. What problem do you have that's greater than that? But yet, when you go to the Lord in prayer, you're often tempted to lay before him your problems and not lay before him his promises. And say, Lord, you have promised me this. How can I, in turn, make my heart line up with yours so that your promise can be fulfilled in my life? Because if his promise isn't being fulfilled in your life, it's not because of him. It's because of you. So we're gonna wrap up. I'm just tell you 4 quick things that we see in the battle here that Joshua engages with the Israelites that helps us today. And that's one, that God has shown a willingness to intervene for our benefit when we pray to Him. Did you know that the Lord didn't need the sun to stand still? He didn't need that. He could have, by a word, just spoken, and hailstones would have fell on every single one of them. But He gave Joshua a moment where he can come before the Lord of all creation and be humbled and reminded who his God is. And he can surrender his authority to God and say, I trust you. If this is your promise to me that you will kill everybody who has wronged us and raised up against us, then I surrender it all to you. And you can take care of it how you see fit. But if you want to let me, then here's what I'll do. I'll command that the sun stop moving. If you said today is the day that they'll die, then I'll just command the sun stop moving. And the Lord says, I have shown a willingness to work for you when you pray to me the right way. That you don't come to me and lay before your complaints and your problems. You come before me and you lay down my promises to you. And you say, I'm going to get my will lined up with yours. I'm going to get my heart lined up with yours. And then, God, you can show out however you want to. God knew the sun was setting. Please. He created that sun. It is by His thought that sun still moves. I'm sorry, sunset still. The earth still moves. Get this science thing done right one of these days, guys. The earth still moves around it and revolves so that the sun is here one moment and gone the next. The Lord knew that. He didn't need to be reminded that the sun was setting. He was looking for a servant that would call upon the Lord to say, if it's your will that these people die today, let me be your servant. When you've got a problem, remember you're still just a servant to the one true God. That you can call upon Him and surrender your authority to Him and say, Lord, you've promised me something. Take me as you will, and I will do whatever you choose for me. And that is how your promises will be fulfilled in my life. But often, we want to come before Him and present the problem and the complaint. And God, what are you doing about this? You said that you were always going to take care of me. And here I am, I lost my job today. Why would you give me a job just to take it away? Why would you give me this just to take it away? He's looking for a servant. Do with me as you will. You're the one true God. There's nothing I have that doesn't belong to you. I have nothing that is not of yours. If your will is going to be done in my life, just let me do as you would have me do. I'm all yours, Lord. That's what He was looking for in Joshua, a servant that would be obedient to Him. Surrender all. He given Joshua authority over a whole nation. But as we talked about in Sunday school this morning, your authority means nothing if you don't surrender to the one true God. You can be a ruler. You can be a leader. You can be a leader of a household. But if the leader of your household above you is not God, if the ruler above you is not God, you can be president of the United States, but if your president is God, it doesn't matter. You have no authority. It means nothing. He's looking for a servant. His servant serves the Lord and serves His people. He had let His people down before. He let them steal from the Lord something that belonged to Him. He let one of His people walk off with it. He should have been right there. And as everyone marched by Him after victory, He said, let me see your pockets. The Lord gave us a command. He said, nobody would take anything. Nobody would steal from Him today. Everything either belongs to Him or we burn it in place. Nothing belongs to you. And as everybody marched by Him, let me see your pockets. What do you have on you? He let His people down. He started serving Himself instead of serving God. That gave Him a commandment. But today, this day, as the sun was setting, He was looking for a servant. And His servant came to Him and said, here's the promise you have. Let me fulfill it for you now. This is your promise. Let me fulfill it. The second thing that we learned is that God can answer all of these prayers by doing the impossible the supernatural and the unbelievable. He said the sun stopped moving in place. A whole other day was removed from our calendar that day. A whole day gone because the night never fell. We have a day in history that didn't exist. And God said, what can you lay before me today? And any promise I've ever given you that I can't fulfill, even by doing the impossible. God said there's nothing too big for him. There's nothing too great for him. God loves to answer his prayers to us in a way that is very illogical, very unscientific, and very unexplainable. And he does so he can be glorified by it. If cancer can be removed from somebody by the hand of a surgeon, then that surgeon can get all credit for it. But if the surgeon says, I can't do nothing here, and he sends the servant to lay a hand on that person, and healing comes, the Lord loves to answer prayers in such a way that only he can be glorified by it. When the world says it can't happen, that's when God does his best work. Because that's when he is glorified, when he shows up for you. No man can ever steal his glory. And so when you face the impossible and everybody tells you something can't be done, something can't happen in your life, healing will never come in that way, that's when God can show up. That's when God can really do some amazing work, because that's when no man can rob him of his glory. When no man can steal from him. The third thing is that God doesn't pick sides. A lot of people like to look at God picked a side here. We have an army, we have another army, and they're fighting each other, and God chose a winner. No, God has a will and a plan, and then we're just left to decide where we fall into it. If God's will is that Israel will be his people, then everybody else is going to make a decision. Are we for Israel and for that God, or are we going to raise up against them and try to defeat them? God doesn't pick sides. He's got a permanent, never-changing will. And it's for us to decide which side we're going to be on. A lot of people say, I've got God on my side. No, God has already decided what he wants. You're on his side. You have to decide, are you going to be part of God's will, or are you going to fight against it? And when you fight against it, you like to say, well, God's just unfair. God picked the winner in this, and that's not true. God had a perfect will, a perfect plan. And you just get to decide which side of that you're going to be on. The fourth, the last thing, God answers prayers when the result fulfills his glory, his will, and our need collectively. When we seek those three things, God loves to show out. I told you God's got a perfect plan. He's got a perfect will. And in the midst of that, we get to present to him our need. And when those things align, when we seek that God be glorified by the way he answers our prayer, and that when we seek his will for our life and his plan to be fulfilled by the way that he takes care of us, God really loves to show out during that time. If you come before the Lord and ask a prayer that goes against his will, or if you come to him in prayer and you ask for fulfillment of your prayer that will not glorify him, don't be surprised when he doesn't answer it. Because God, above all things, is for God. I told you this before. A lot of people don't believe that. They like to think that God's for me first. But God is for his glory and his honor, and he's allowed to be because he's all powerful. So in his glory, he likes to show up in prayer for us and heal us and provide for us and answer our prayers so that he can be glorified and honored in all that he does for us. And if you have come to him and sought something other than his will, something that you want, not what he wants, don't be surprised when he doesn't answer it. But in the midst of his glory and his plan and his will for us, he allows us to interject our need. And when we can put our need into what his will is for our life, and in return all we can do is just glorify and honor him for what he did, God loves to show out. So as we get ready to dismiss today, Sarah's going to play a worship video for us, and we can use that as a time of invitation. Somebody that's hurt today, somebody that is has got a prayer that needs to be prayed over them, somebody that has a promise that God's given them that hasn't seen the fulfillment of it. That's for you. God promised you, and here's where I'll go with this, that when you sin against Him, there would be an eternal punishment for that. That not any one sin would ever go unnoticed by Him. Not one. Every idle thought, every action that you did that you thought nobody saw, God said He saw it all. And not one would go unanswered. But He made a promise to us that His Son would come and the Lamb would be slaughtered on the cross. And if we believe in Him and believe in that, He would take on all of our sins. And we could have salvation through the Son, Jesus Christ. That's a promise. If you haven't felt the fulfillment of that promise, that's the only one that matters to you today. But if you have, if you've given your life to Christ, and He's promised you something, and you have not felt it yet, what is He not capable of taking care of for you? He keeps this world spinning in motion by a thought. What is He not capable of taking care of for you? Don't come before Him with the problem. Come before Him with the promise and a commitment to do what you have to do to make that promise be fulfilled in your life. Joshua came to him and said, why did you even bring us here? You opened up the Jordan and allowed us to walk over into the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. And you let us conquer one of the greatest cities of all time. So much so that then you let me say, anybody even tried to rebuild it, the firstborn and the lastborn would die because of it. And then you bring us to this small town, and we die there. Why would you even bring us over here? He was laying before the Lord of all creation his problems. But it wasn't until he laid before him the promise and said, how can we do for you what you would have us do so that your promise will be fulfilled in our life? That the Lord said, now we're working. Now we got it going on. So if you had a promise from the Lord that something would happen in your life, lay before him your servitude. How can I serve you, Lord? What can I do for you so that this promise may be fulfilled in my life? So as we stand, as we sing, as we praise God, he's open to hearing you. If you need somebody to pray for you, pray with you, I would love to pray with you.